So, hey, welcome to another edition of People's History. Today we'll be looking at global conflicts and mostly focusing on World War I. This is a brief overview. It does not replace the reading. We'll be working out of Ways of the World by Robert Strayer. That is the book that I'm kind of lecturing out of and I kind of follow along with. This is Unit 7 of the AP exam. This is a test prep for that AP exam. Just kind of a brief overview, go through the lectures. The way I kind of use it in my classroom is that I use these videos as a supplement for the kids and their reading. So continue to do the reading, guys. Do the work, acquire the knowledge for yourself, and then we'll work through all this other stuff together. So just beginning, so we're talking World War I. Hopefully you guys have watched the last video where it talked about the growth of imperialism and industrialization and, you know, the factors that led to World War I. So we have some major core problems that lead into World War I. Primarily what we're going to be talking about first, military industrialization. So the ability to manufacture large amounts of munitions, weapons, and so within that you have technological advances that we had never seen before. Things like submarines, machine guns, barbed wire, tanks, airplanes. All of these new technologies created an entirely new system of war, which was a major factor to the start of the war. So we also, along with that, we had this ally system begin to form, where we had the Triple Entente that contained Russia, France, the UK, and later on included the United States. And then you had the Triple Alliance, that Germany, Italy, Austria, and Hungary. And then after that, the Ottoman Empire joined. Growth of nationalism is a major factor in the beginning of World War I as well. The idea that our way of life is better than your way of life, and now we're going to form like-minded groups together, perpetuate that form of life. So those are some of the big overview factors that really led to it. We're going to first start with military industrialism, or industrial militarism. There's so many different ways to say it. Lots of different historians say it in lots of different ways. For me, it's just military industrialization. And kind of the key factors to that, World War I was an extraordinarily bloody conflict. Around 10 million casualties, or I should say deaths, as a result of World War I. And it was kind of because of the form of fighting. None of the powers that got involved in the fighting really believed that it was going to last as long as it did. So it lasted, started in 1914, ended in 1919 roughly. So they expected this to be about a 6-month war. So it began in June, they expected it to be over in December. That was totally not the case. And so some of the factors that really led to that was two main factors led to the death tolls. First was the creation of the machine gun. Used to be that only select countries had the machine gun. Now it was widely available to all countries. So the machine gun is a huge factor in the amount of deaths. Also, along with that, the technological advancement of barbed wire. So what the barbed wire would do is force those soldiers into a firing line. And that forced firing line allowed the machine guns to mow through people, causing such heavy death tolls for the Europeans and pretty much the entire world. So along with that, the factor that everybody decided to build these large armies. So militarism became a huge deal throughout the world. Everyone wanted vast armies. The only country during that time period that did not have conscription was the United Kingdom. Everyone else, you had to serve in the military before you could move forward in your life. You had maybe from 18 to 20, 18 to 22, you served in the military. It was required. The UK was the only European country that did not have that. Moving forward, we can talk about the alliance system. So the alliance system became a major issue and causation of World War One, because you had the inability to negotiate between these countries. They kind of lost their ability to talk to one another, and be able to reason out and stop the war before it really became a problem. So the way it kind of worked out is none of these countries believed that there was an unexpected event, right, that they did not think was going to take place, and that was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. The World War I did not begin because of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. It was a result of the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. So since he was assassinated in Sarajevo by a Serbian national, Serbia was then declared Austria and Hungary, the Austro-Hungarians declared war on Serbia because of that assassination, which then forced Russia, who was allies with Serbia, to declare war on Austria, right? Now the United Kingdom Germany, it gets confusing, guys, I promise. It's not a super streamlined thing. So Russia declares war on Austria because they are allies with Serbia, because they believe that, they wanted to ally with all the Slavic nations. Germany, who is the big dog in Europe, other than the United Kingdom and Russia, they were allied with the Austro-Hungarians. Okay, so they declare war on Russia. The UK is now friends with Russia, so they declare war on Germany, and vice versa, and it continued. Then the dominoes fell. This country declared war on that country. That country declared war on this country, and the inevitability of that world war just took off. So that's kind of how the alliance system really affected the start of World War I and the beginning. Okay, so we kind of talked about that. Mounting pressure to do more for your nation. Okay, let's talk a little bit about nationalism and just kind of the life during World War I. So we still had this chivalrous idea of military during that time, and we kind of continue it today, honestly. And the idea was that nationalism is extreme pride in one's country, and so it was an honor to join the military. It still is an honor to join the military, and your family requested you to join the military. And so what we saw was this above world kind of view of the military soldiers. They had special privileges throughout Europe. If you were an officer in the army, you had special privileges. And so there was this mounting public pressure. Propaganda really starts to take shape during the World War I. This is where we start to see the things like conserve for your country, and you start to see things like join the army and those type of things go through as a result of the propaganda that's being spread. So this was also raising a large army was brought to the forefront in a couple different manners. First, it was the media, controlled by the government, pushing out propaganda. Secondly, education. The school sites began to push kids into joining the military. And this family front as well. So the families wanted to have their sons go to war. They wanted the prestige of saying that they had a son that was an officer, ranking officer in the military. It carried with it a certain bravado and weight. War was extraordinarily bloody. We're not going to get into too much depth about the style of war. We will talk about trench warfare a tiny bit. So trench warfare essentially breaks down to, we had these technological advances like barbed wire and machine guns, but they still held on to these old beliefs of how a war should be fought, where I'm on my side, you're on your side, and I'm going to run at you and take your side. However, once you added in the machine gun with that, me running at you was essentially me getting fired upon and just getting obliterated. And then add in the barbed wire funneling me down into one spot. I'd get out of my trench, climb up the ladder, run at you through the barbed wire, and I essentially got into your firing line and would be taken care of. So there was years where not an inch was gained, and you had one side on one side here and then the other side there, and the trench would be dug and it got deeper and further back. And along with that, the conditions that the soldiers had to live in was awful. You had gangrene. Mustard gas was another innovation that took place during that time period. So they would just throw the mustard gas into the trench, and essentially suffocate the soldiers out that way. So this all kind of led to that 10 million casualty number that I mentioned earlier. So the war kind of shaped out that way. It was a war of attrition. The last army that had the last soldier and the last ration, the last bullet, was going to win the war. So the United States jumps into the war in 1917. Fresh troops came in, fresh munitions, fresh food. All of those factors really led into Germany, who was the last man standing after the Ottomans bowed out, the Italians bowed out, the Austro-Hungarian Empire was crumbling. And so the Germans were the last standing, and they were the ones that got most, or all of the blame, at the Treaty of Versailles. So the British and French, they seized the landholdings that the Germans had in Africa, furthering their empires. The British and Japan also seized the holdings of of the Germans that they held in China. And what we saw in Germany was this extraordinarily rapid drop in their economy, absolutely devastated Germany. Things like there's stories of wheelbarrows full of money to go buy bread. The customer went in to go get the bread. People would dump out the wheelbarrow, or dump out the money and steal the wheelbarrow because it was more valuable than the mark at that time. Those stories and the destitute that took place after the Treaty of Versailles that Germany felt led to the rise of the authoritarian state of the Nazi regime. We'll get into that in a little bit later of a video, probably the third video within this set. So we'll also talk about the Ottoman Empire entered in on the side of the Germans. However, with the Ottoman Empire, it was already beginning to fail due to lack of advances in technology. They were really hesitant to join in on this technology forefront. When they did join in and they thought that they would fight in World War I, what they didn't expect is a lot of the tribes within the Middle East began to band together and fought against the Ottoman Empire. A lot of the credit of that gets awarded to Lawrence of Arabia, T.E. Lawrence of the United Kingdom, but most of that actual hard work went through those tribes within the Middle East. Okay, so remember that as you move forward, that not everything is a movie when it comes down to real life.